Welcome to the Pillar Podcast, where we put racial equity front and center. Join us as we dissect equity policy, overcoming achievement gaps, and strategies that ensure equitable learning opportunities, experiences, and outcomes for all students.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pillar Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Brandon, and today I have with me some pretty special people from Lane Elementary. Miss Cassandra Hayes, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great.
Good. Adrian and Rachel. So I'll give each person an opportunity to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about your role and what you do at Lane Elementary.
Good morning. I'm Cassandra Hayes. I'm the principal at Lane Elementary. Before I worked at Lane, I was an assistant principal at Wilkerson and Lane Elementary. And previously before that, I was a Go Clarity coach then. Now they call them academic instructional coaches at an elementary school. And I taught 15 years.
My name is Adrian Davenport, and I am the social emotional learning teacher at Lane Elementary, and I am currently teaching the students to be mindful with their words, mindful with their actions. I teach them how to focus and how to self-regulate, teaching social skills. Before my role during the SEL, I was a classroom teacher, and I've been with JCPS for 18 years.
And I am Rachel Douglas, and I am the academic instructional coach at Lane. This is my first year as academic instructional coach, or the AIC as they call them. So I support teachers, and the big thing this year was helping with curriculum implementation of EL and IM. So supporting teachers through that, making sure they have resources and materials they need, and training, as well as data analysis, and helping with the school's literacy plan, and other duties as assigned.
That's one thing we all have, is the other duties as assigned.
Thank you.
Well, wow, man, you guys have an array of experience between the collective. And I'm sure that makes for a pretty unique, robust, and intentional leadership team,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get it right into it. So, Adrian, you're fairly new in the principal role, I would say. How many years have you been principal at Lane Elementary?
I have been principal at Lane for 3 years. I took over during COVID, so that was it was a tough time, but I took over during that, and I say all the time, if I made it through that year, I can probably make it through anything. But I've been there for 3 years, and before that, as I said, I was the assistant principal at Lane for 2 years. So.
Adrian, how long have you been with Lane?
I was with Lane, I think this is 6 years.
It's your 6th year? Okay.
Yeah, this is my 6th year.
And Rachel?
This is my first year at Lane.
Okay.
I previously was at Stouffer Elementary. I came through the then called the ACES program.
Mm-hmm.
Formerly, now it's the teacher residency.
Teacher residency program, yep.
Mm-hmm. So with Dr. Marshall and Ms. Fishback. So I came through that program about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So did my student teaching and all that. And so I was at Stouffer Elementary, taught kindergarten, 3rd grade, back to kindergarten, back to 3rd grade, and then a related arts class called Makerspace.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fairly familiar with the ACES. So when I came to the district, I started out with the Leawood Teacher Residency program. So
okay.
I got a chance to learn a lot about that.
Yeah.
Well, given you all's current time frame at Lane, and obviously with the district, I'm sure you all are familiar with the district's racial equity policy.
Yep.
But prior to the creation of that policy in 2018, I like to get an idea from each one of your lenses, right? Had you been seeing racial equity work implemented?
Well, for me, I didn't see it happening. It was very quiet. People didn't talk about that. It wasn't really talked about with our kids, at least not in the school that I was at. It was kind of hush, and nobody addressed issues. And it was almost like, as a Black educator, being new, that that wasn't what you were supposed to talk about ever. Like you just do your job and go home. Do your job, go home. And so I did not see that happening. I was one of 2 Black educators in my school, so it was like you didn't really have anybody that you could go to other than that one person. Like you had to bounce ideas off of that one person, so that was difficult. And so I just didn't see racial equity taking place in the schools.
I agree. So I've been at Lane Elementary. Prior to Lane, I was at Maupin Elementary, and prior to Maupin, I was at Bick. And I would say I didn't see it at all. I'm surprised because now that I reflect, even if I was at a majority Black school, it still wasn't. It still wasn't, and I'm kind of appalled. I'm like, well, what was I doing? And I think I was just curriculum, academic, with a lot of behavior, but we never got to the core. We never got to the root problem of it. It was just, put a Band-Aid on it. Yeah.
And teach these standards.
Yeah. Teach the standards, put a Band-Aid on, and keep it going.
And I didn't, before the policy came out, I really was not aware at all. I didn't see any work being done towards it. But after, I really felt like that after the community made a stink about it, a big stink about it with all the Breonna Taylor things, and that we were going to have to do something about it when we came back in person. I felt like that's when it became, it came to the forefront of everybody, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Oh, there's this policy. And so now let's look at this policy. Let's see what we really need to do. So initially I felt like it was, okay, this is one more thing that we have to do. But I did see the evolution of it as far as instead of it just being one more thing that we have to do, to teachers and staff realizing, okay, this work really is important, and this is why. We have to do this or else, because it's, we're gonna be spiraling backwards if we don't. So I am pleased that we are, this is at the forefront of our work and everything.
It's intentional.
It's very intentional, which is what you have to be if you want to see any type of change. So.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. Years when I was an AP and I would go to the meetings with, principals and APs, we'd have the agenda and it'd be, curriculum and everything down. And then at the last part was racial equity. And I remember at one of the meetings, I said, how can we truly focus on racial equity when they get the last literally 15 minutes of the agenda, a 6-hour agenda a day, and everybody's went over their time, and then you got racial equity for 15 or 20 minutes. How can we say that this work is important when it's going last and we're getting a taste of what we should be getting as a district? And so I felt like right after COVID and with the Breonna Taylor situation, that it was we have to do this work and we're gonna talk about it, and that's what we did.
I appreciate how JCPS started the racial envoys.
So
when I experienced last year, and we'll probably get into that later, but when I experienced it, I had such a passion. I said, that's exactly what we need, to be a voice for people who know what's going on, people who are oblivious, and to someone to kind of help get it into, because when we go through it, everyone's, oh yeah, I'm fine, and we're doing it. Yeah, we're doing the work. But are we really doing the work authentically? And that's what I realized we haven't been.
We have not.
And so these envoys that are being deployed into the school systems, to the schools themselves, I really hope that we could take advantage of it, because I'm passionate and I love it. I love that idea.
And one of the good things that I think that we've been doing at Lane is with our envoy coming to a small group setting as opposed to large faculty meeting.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it.
So the envoy is coming to our PLCs. Smaller space, people can't really hide, but people can also right. Because people can feel comfortable.
Put that away.
And share and share and be honest and genuine. So I feel like there's more work that can happen in that type of setting as opposed to a larger faculty meeting type of deal.
Yeah.
How do you feel the adoption of the racial equity policy in your school community has come? Like we mentioned briefly, like before it was just essentially something just thrown up there, we're checking a box, but really getting your leadership and educators to buy in. Like this is not something we're just talking about, but we're implementing this into our culture.
Yeah, so as a leader and thinking about the racial equity, our plan and how we are going to implement this, it has, I'm not going to lie, it has been rough. I have been trying as a leader to rally in people. And, I have my Black educators, I have that support. And I do have some educators that are white that are right there with me. And then I have some that, like they said, that they're going to hide or they're going to nod their head and say, yes, 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 we are doing this. Or we already know about this, but it's not really taking place. It is hard to implement that when you have educators that don't really want to make the change, and then also educators that don't see me as a Black leader as the leader.
That's the leader. Yeah.
They second guess everything that I say or do as if I don't know as much as other people. And I'm the first one to admit, if I don't know it, I'm not going to pretend like I know it. And I tell my staff that all the time. If I don't know, I'm not going to, and shake my head and say I know. I'm going to say I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. Yeah. That's just my mentality. But it's rough. Last year I said, it's Black History Month, and I want to make sure that my students, because right now we have 49.9% students of color. I said, I want to make sure that my students know that we are here, we support them, we see them, we care about them. And I did. I said, this is what we're doing for Black History Month. I'm going to show our students that I care, and I affirm them. Yeah. And that was a problem for many people. I mean, even as much as to put up a Black History Month bulletin board. You'd have thought I asked somebody to do surgery.
It was rough.
It was rough. And like they said, people hide behind the mask and pretend. And as an educator, I had to put on my big girl pants and have some tough skin because it came like a wrath. And I remember being upset and angry and saying, why are people so like this? I mean, it was rough.
Appalling.
Yeah. It was. And people just are cruel. And some people are not ready to handle it. They're not. And just being real and transparent became a problem, and it made me second guess. Am I really doing the work as a leader for this racial equity? Because I've got so much pushback, and people are writing complaints, and they're calling compliance, and Ms. Hayes is doing this, and her and the other Black educators wore Black and Educated T-shirts, and they didn't ask anybody else. Like, you want to second guess if you're doing the right work, and then you, as an educator and as a leader, you become like, oh, I better step back from that, because nobody wants to be if I can use it, in trouble for doing the work, but that's what it felt
It
like.
felt like, yeah.
It
yeah.
definitely felt like that.
It was rough. It was rough.
Yeah, and I feel like on the elementary level, we are at an advantage as far as students because, you know, the younger they are, the easier it is to mold their mindset, and they're more open. They haven't had all this clutter, you know, built in yet, whereas middle and high school, you know, they become more cluttered. So our students are very open to equity discussions and things like that. So I think our biggest challenge is to change the mindset of the adults, because we know the
Yes.
adults pour into them. So it is hard work trying to change the mindset of the adults, because a lot of times as educators, well, I'm not gonna say a lot, all the time as educators, the things that come out of our mouth are the beliefs that the students start to take on.
To take on, yeah.
I always say
Yeah.
that the students, they have the same personality as their teacher. And they really do. Like if you have a teacher that's real bubbly, and you know, you see students acting the same way. If you see a teacher that's very rigid and structured, you see the students starting to act the same way. So if we can transform the mindset of the adults, then our work with the students becomes easier. Now, how do we transform the mindset of those adults?
That's
part of the work, right?
Yeah, it is part of the work. It is part, and it's the hardest part of the work. Like I feel like we could do. Our kids are going to be open, and we can do the work with racial equity. But the mindset of the adults has to be open, and they have to be ready to receive and be transparent about the things that are really happening, and not sugarcoating what's really happening in our community, in our world, and that's what they do. That's what they do.
It sounds like it's really uncovering those biases that you really some folks know they have, and some people don't realize they have, or some don't want to admit that they have, right? And so that kind of brings me to the 3 pillars, right? So the 3 pillars of JCPS are backpack of success skills, racial equity, and culture and climate, right? They're all, I would say, fairly equally important, but how important is it to the overall success of Black and brown students that there's an intentional and consistent attempt to create positive and a more reflective culture and climate?
Well,
And I want to be clear when I say reflective, right? We have teachers, educators, leadership that look like us, sound like us, talk like us.
so one part of the racial equity policy is about diversity in hiring. And so I made that one of my goals last year. Like, I'm going to intentionally try to hire a staff that matches my student makeup. And I think it works. It is working out well. I said to them before, you know, I had a teacher when I was in elementary school that I just wanted her to recognize me. She recognized all the other white kids and spoke to them, and you know, I wanted to get a dress like the white kids had, and shoes like them. And one day my mom bought me these stockings that had these little bunnies on it, and my teacher said something to me, and I was like, oh, she liked my stockings. So I wore those stockings every single day because I wanted her to recognize me. And after I stopped wearing them, she didn't. But in my school, I want to make sure that my students know that we see them. I hear you. I'm listening. And even though if you don't understand them, just listening sometimes affirms it for them. And I think that is important in our climate and culture. I think that's going to take down some of the behaviors that we have going on, not just in our school, but in the district.
Yeah.
You know, kids know when you don't like them. They know. And they will tell you specifically, Miss So-and-so doesn't like me, and she lets so-and-so do such and such because they ask all the time to go to the bathroom and they get to go, but when I ask, they don't let me go. And they will internalize that as you not liking them, or you doing this because they're black or whatever. So I think with the racial equity pillar and climate and culture and backpack of success skills, which I'm just going to say this, racial equity, and I know they're all equal, but you got to have that. When you're thinking about racial equity, our black and brown students aren't putting the same things in their backpack of success skills as our white students are. And what the climate and culture they think should be like for them is not the same as what they would see in you know, other school communities. But I said, I want to make sure that we are being reflective of our students. I want, you know, pictures up of our students. And I even said, when you walk into my school, there's a picture of a person that is white, and it's been there. And I said, I'm going to put my picture up there because when they walk in the building, I need them to see me.
And everybody else who walks in the building.
Yes,
Stop
and no.
pretending you don't see you.
Yeah, and they do, because I have parents that will walk right past me.
Where's the principal?
Right here.
You
I'm
just
here.
asked her.
Yeah,
You snubbed her. That was her.
It is mind-boggling to me that is still going on right now today. When we talk so much about racial equity and how that we know that that's not right, but it's still going on. And so for me, racial equity is the heart of it, because you can't say you're going to fix climate and culture if you haven't talked about racial equity. You can't say you're going to talk about the backpack of success skills if you truly haven't looked at racial equity and what your kids are putting in there. Because I know, I'm like, when my son did his backpack of success skills, I'm like, you putting that in there? And this was before I, you know, really was versed in the racial equity policy. But I was like, no, that's what he wants to put in there. Put that in there then. That's you.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay.
So, sorry.
And I think, speaking of like the backpack, because I've seen lots of those presentations, and you know, our kids of color, theirs looks very different because their background knowledge and their experiences are very different. Doesn't make it you know, less of, because I mean, you are what you are, and we should be able to appreciate it. But I do applaud JCPS on the EL curriculum, because embedded in there, you know, there are backpack opportunities for, you know, artifacts, and so therefore it does kind of level the playing field, so that every student has the same opportunity to get that same artifact in there, and then you make it what you want to make it, but at least we all have that same opportunity to do that. And then of course it's up to the educator to promote, you know, the diversity within that. But I do especially like that about this new curriculum that we're implementing. So I think that definitely provides equity for our students.
And I do like about the curriculum that it is very engaging for our students. When I'm walking in classrooms and doing walkthroughs with, you know, my team, I see more student engagement. Where before, you could walk in a classroom and heads would be down, or people are not really paying attention. But, you know, like for instance, I walked in a 5th grade classroom and they were reading the book Esperanza Rising. And those kids were having discussions about, you know, how families have to work hard and why is it different for this family than this. So they understand and they get it. Deep, rich. And so, yes, very relatable.
They're not just answering questions. They're having dialogue.
And that part is where we need to really dig in deep, because our kids know. They know. And they want it. And we just have to hold people to the same expectations and not down it for people. They're still comprehending what they're reading, just at a different aspect. And I do like the EL curriculum for that. It's very engaging.
And I think it's important, for leaders to be relatable. And speaking of the culture and climate piece, I've witnessed, and I feel like since I'm new to the school that I'm like on the outside looking in still. But sometimes, people on the outside see things that people on the inside don't see. But I notice how, like Miss Hayes, she relates to the kids. Like they come up to her and she's like, now why are you doing that? Now you are not supposed to do. But it's so relatable, and so making that connection with the students and forming that relationship. They feel like they have a relationship where they can talk about hair and talk about whatever, because she looks like me. My hair is braided and her hair is braided, and we have that. And I don't think a lot of kids have seen that before. I know when I started teaching kindergarten, the kids would just stare at me. And I'm like, so we have to wait till about October before they stop staring at me, because some of them, it was the first time they seen somebody of color. And so I would share, with my parents, I'm like, I think they're just not even used to seeing somebody with brown skin. So now that we've gotten past that, now we can learn ABC and 1, 2, 3. So I think there's a different atmosphere fostered at Lane, as far as there are so many students of color, different countries, different languages, different everything's different. But I feel like it's rich. It's a rich environment where students can feel comfortable. Comfortable kids misbehave is what I say. They feel comfortable enough to let it all out.
To let your hair down.
Let it all out, because that's who you are. But I feel like that climate of being comfortable with who you are is easily fostered when your leader is being personable with the students.
Yeah, that's one thing I wish, like as I often reflect on my K through 12 experience, I didn't really have diversity from a leadership standpoint. There wasn't much diversity in curriculum. But I always had this underlying question, like, none of this looks like me. I don't think at the time I was formulating in those thoughts, but because when I moved to Kentucky, I was in elementary, 3rd, 4th grade, and I'm originally from New Orleans, and so it was like. And we moved in the middle of the school year. So it was complete culture shock. But I just couldn't really grasp, there was just something different. And didn't see many people of color. And so my dialect has changed a little bit over the years. But when I first came, it was like, just like the students were looking at you like, what's like, that's how they were looking at me. Like, what's wrong? What's like? Why do you talk like that? Why do you dress like that? It's you really get put on the outskirts of things. So I'm glad the racial equity policy has been able to not only shed a light on the necessity of diversity in leadership, educators, and curriculum, but we're kind of moving away from just talking about it to implementing it. And I know that takes time, unfortunately, but I think sometimes a slower, more gradual, intentional walk is better than a sprint.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I like when Ms. Hayes talked about her focus being, hiring and making sure that her staff matched the demographics at the school, because I wasn't aware of this in my own house. And my son, who's now a junior at Hampton University, when we were talking about colleges and where you want to go, what do you want to be in life, and he said, I want to be a teacher. And I'm like, really? Because I was just shocked. I was shocked. I mean, being a teacher is good. I mean, I'm a teacher. That's a good thing. But I was just shocked for his personality. But he said that K through 12, out of all of his years, he only had one teacher of color. And I was like, really? Like, I never even thought about it. And he just said he just wondered how his life and outlook might have been different if he had at least a couple more teachers of color. So he wanted to become a teacher so that he could maybe have that impact on somebody else.
Wow.
And so, he decided he wanted to go to an HBCU. And at first I said, well, why HBCU? That's not what the world looks like. That's just, he said, well, if I can just see what that's like for 4 years and experience that, and then I can go back to the real world and take what I've learned. And so I was like, wow, that, because, in my own house, and I didn't even realize that. But now working in the system, I see how students react differently when they have a teacher of color. Representation really matters. It really matters. And not just African American, but Hispanic and Asian. And so I'm glad that that is a focus and is addressed in the racial equity policy, that our goal will be to hire more students that look like our district, because now isn't our district, are we like 51% color or something like we're more color than non-color, and so that does
majority
make a
minority.
Yeah, we're majority minority, so that that does make a difference. So I feel like we will definitely be more intentional as a school and as a district, focusing on those
To make those
efforts.
changes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, what overall impact would you say the racial equity policy has, not only at Lane Elementary, but let's say across the board? What's the residual impact that you feel individually, like as Cassandra, right? As Adrian, as Rachel,
Rachel,
excuse me,
That's okay.
excuse me, as individuals, but also in your professional roles, right? What is the overall impact of the racial equity policy from the individual lens and the professional lens, and how has the racial equity policy affirmed you in that same lens? Kind of a loaded question, but feel free to kind of merge it into one. Yeah.
Well, for me, it has affirmed that I can be a Black educator, and I do know just as much as my counterparts do. It has given me, I feel like, a voice. The policy has given me a voice that I can address the things that I see that are problems without feeling hushed about anything. I think the overall impact of this is to ensure that our students of color, our Black and brown babies, are able to get the same things that their counterparts are getting, receive that high quality education, and then that they are also able to have a voice with this. And my son went to, he graduated from school here in Jefferson County, but I feel like as a parent and him as a student, I had to look for things more than I feel like his counterparts did, such as scholarships. It wasn't really out there, and we can't help our Black and brown babies if we're not willing to put in the work to do that for them. So for me, this racial equity policy, I hope for it to increase the academic achievement of our students of color, which will in turn, because we know that the things that we do in our classrooms that are culturally relevant not only impact our students of color, but they are great for everybody.
Everybody. Correct.
So for me, that's what my goal is for this racial equity policy, and then also to affirm our students of color. They need that affirmation too, so that they can grow and be great. If you notice now in our district, we have students, and I call it, they are woke. They are woke. They want to talk about the things that are bothering them. They want to talk about the things that are happening in our community, the violence, the things that are happening with the police department, the Breonna Taylor situation, anything, their friends that are getting killed. And we touched about this earlier. We are seeing more and more Black girls that are being, for whatever reason, dying violently. And that is scary. I just hope to be able to make an impact on our students before it gets to the point that we are seeing right now, that is like, it is overtaking our community and our society. So I'm sorry if I took it.
Well, I feel like with this racial equity policy, it helps me to be confident in who I am personally. It helps me to be more confident as an educator. I don't feel like it has to be white-laced.
Yes.
Correct.
Because previously, white is right, and the more you can assimilate, the more successful you are.
Yes.
So
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking the same thing.
So I feel like with this policy, it's like, it's okay to be you. It's okay to be different. Different is not wrong. Different is different. And so it also helps me as an educator feel like I can, when I do this work and try to put it in place in our building, I feel like I'm paying it forward to the next generation, that they can be confident in who they are. When I'm working with elementary kids, hopefully when they get to high school, something that some programming or some policy or some conversation that we had is embedded in them, so that as they move forward, they're less likely to make bad choices, or they want to be proud of who they are, and they want to do the work. They want to do their homework. They want to do well on the test, because on the ACT, because that's what that's been embedded in them. But it's still okay to be who you are. And
Absolutely.
And we were talking about like all the opportunities that JCPS offers, like the aviation program, helping them to build towards taking advantage of all these opportunities. You can be a certified EMT, but when you're done, you can have all these college credits when you're done with JCPS. There's so many opportunities, but so many kids don't take advantage of it for whatever reason. But if we start at our level, our elementary level, and embedding those things into them, then hopefully they will have an impact. And I feel like with this racial equity policy, it helps us to do those things, because I did feel like a lot of reasons that kids don't take advantage of opportunities is because A, they're not confident in who they are as a person. So they spend most of their K through 12 years trying to figure out who I am, what is it okay for me to be, how is it okay for me to dress, and so they've missed the whole mark. Now you're in 12th grade,
And you're like, what am I
going to do when I graduate? Oh my goodness, because I've spent my whole time trying to figure out who I am. So
and we as educators have to put things in place to inform them about the things and the opportunities. We have to inform them about, like, the aviation program. We have to inform them, because many of them don't know, and as an educator in the district, some things I do know about, but it's because I'm an educator. But what about my friends and family members that are Black, and they don't really know, and they don't know the right questions to ask. They don't know who to ask. We have to, as a district, put that out there and be diligent and intentional about putting things in place for our kids to know those and to be who they are and find out who they are. So
something that I've been studying and kind of obsessed about was educational benign neglect. And I think that this tool allows me and my other educators to be confident with making sure that we not call out people, like I was saying during our PLCs, but call people in to highlight.
That's the difference.
Highlight that, you may not, and that's the thing about implicit biases. You don't recognize it a lot of the times. And when you don't recognize it, you continuously do it. And sometimes the people that your like-minded friends are having the same biases as you, so they're not going to call you into the table either. So it's just this circle of foolery going on. And so this has allowed me to, strategically call people in. I'm not calling you out to, harass you or to embarrass you, but this is the work of the district. This is the work of our schools, and this is the work of people who actually love people and do what's best for children, like we all like to say we do. But are you actually doing that? So I can stand firm with this and say, but this is what the district is asking us to do. It's not me.
It changes things.
This is signed by Dr. Polio himself, ma'am. And so making sure that, that we're going to have to call you into the table, darling. We have to sit down and say that this is not really appropriate. And we're not really trying to, hurt your feelings or be combative or be aggressive, but we're just trying to make a change for the students. And for the first time in my career, I'm a special area teacher, so I get to see all the children. And so I always had this little oasis of peace and, power within my own little classroom, but now I get to see everybody. So now I'm blowing like little dandelion seeds, and they're sprinkling all throughout. So I'm like, now you be an ally, okay? You know what an ally is what it looks like. And I'm not just talking about being a bully, but when you see something wrong and it looks like this is what I need for you to do. Stand up and be strong. Be fearless, be respectful, and be kind, but be firm. And so I'm like sprinkling these little seeds because I don't know, are you hearing this? And so I look different than what you might be used to, and take it in. And it's okay.
It's okay.
Take it in.
That
and
empowerment.
So, and that's okay. And so I appreciate the role that I'm in because I get to see and affect, more children than, I were in the past. But that tool, I'm kind of using it for my advantage too. Now, hold on, madam. This our tool, so we can't do that now. Hold on. We can't do that. We got to change that. So that's what I appreciate about it.
It is that sense of empowerment too, and I can appreciate that. I can appreciate great leaders. Dr. Marshall himself, every time I talk to him, I feel empowered and needing to go back and like you said, maybe blow the dandelions seeds on them so that they can hear and understand what the work that we are trying to do. So I feel empowered now as a leader to go out and do the work too, because we have people that are above me that also are doing the work.
Pushing it and doing it. Correct.
Because I sat with this for a minute watching it. I said, oh, look at those words in that title. So I sat on it for a while just to see is it going to be something that we just shelf for a while, or is it something that we're going to truly implement? And if we're going to implement it, for how long? And so when they, said, well, we're going to do envoys, I said, oh, well, come on, JCPS, we doing something. We're trying to do something. That's okay. So I appreciate that we even, the first step was actually putting the tool out there. And then we make another step and said, we're going to implement this for real? I said, that's big because this is a huge district. And, I appreciate that. I really do.
I haven't been fortunate enough to do the work from a school community being at the district level, but that's why I love conversations like this, because I get to hear it and see it firsthand. I get to hear some from our specialists and our EA, BJ Button. They do the equity walkthroughs, right? And just sitting in and hearing some of those conversations, it just reaffirms like the work is being done, and the different areas that the policy addresses, right? Whether it's from instruction, curriculum to trainings, right? It done appropriately, it really does check all the boxes of the school community. So I don't know. I enjoy these conversations because it lets you know a lot of the work that we are doing from top down. Like it's actually reaching students. And a lot of my work here with community outreach and after school programming, I don't necessarily get a direct, I would say, impact. A lot of it's indirect. It's not in school hour learning, or not school hours. but there is an impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, each little thing you're doing, it's just compounding.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So I love indirect.
Yep.
Learning opportunities and touch points, but hearing your experiences and what you're doing is more direct, and so I love that too.
Yes, and we definitely, you know, appreciate being able to speak and share what the work that we are doing, even though it may not be, like you said, a sprint. You know, taking it step by step and putting things in place step by step is it's working, and we know that it is. We got to change the mindset of our adults in order to, you know, truly reach our kids, but that part is working too. So we are getting there. We are getting there.
And what better time for JCPS to have a racial equity policy in place than, you know, for us to be prepared because of the influx of a diverse numbers of students. You know, Louisville is a sanctuary city, and all these, you know, people from different backgrounds are coming. And if we're not prepared for when they come, I think you said, you know, whether we're ready or not, it's here. They're coming, and what are we going to do about it? So I think, you know, having this policy in place is definitely leading us to make sure that we are prepared for what's ahead.
Well, thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully, we'll get a round two. I feel like we can get a round two.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
all right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.